Let's do it! What's going on, my friends? Hope everyone's doing well. I am back in action. It is, what is it today? It is Thursday. It's a good day. I am happy for this week to be over. It's been a crazy week of work in good ways. I'm actually I had so much work this week, but I feel so empowered from it because I was just nailed it on the head and got it done. And you know when you that feeling when you just feel like you have such a workload and then you overcome it, and you just nail it, and then you just feel like you have more. I don't know. You just feel like you have so much energy left to spare. That's kind of where I'm at, and it feels good. So I feel like I'm excited for Friday to come because I'm about to nail the rest of it and keep moving forward. But we are here today, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I actually got an interesting topic to talk about today. It's the topic of Enneagrams. So I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I've actually never heard of the Enneagram before, but I heard about it from my chiropractor. I actually went today to the chiropractor, and she brought it up to me. She's like, I think this is something you might be interested in. You should check it out. So I did, and it is pretty fascinating, and I found it directly. I associated with numerology in different ways because essentially what it is it's a way of classifying or categorizing specific archetypes of personality, and essentially the function or the use of that would be to I would say in terms of in business purposes, it would be to be able to quickly identify someone's dominant archetype or I guess I would say skills or abilities. If you were to say okay, here's 9 different dominant traits that someone could have. You have this particular dominant trait, and so basically it's I'm going to put you in this particular role because I know you're probably going to be best at that particular thing. It could work in terms of just even understanding people in general, to be able to kind of oh, okay, so you're this type of person, that's why you're responding in this particular way. Or maybe if you're presenting information, it's if I know you're this way, then I will present information like this. It's kind of just if you're a kinesthetic learner, and I know that, that's very useful information, because I can be okay, here, feel this, here, go play with this and learn it, because if I tell you about it, you're not going to really get it, and so it's that's useful. However, obviously the unuseful part is labeling and just being oh, you're this, so this is exactly what I should expect, and I already know you. I think that's the part of labeling or categorization that that I don't like. Obviously, it's there is a point in which you have to say no, we're human beings and we're very dynamic in our ways, and yeah, there's ways to classify us. There's ways that we can put ourselves into particular boxes that can help us to understand more, but those boxes should be very translucent and transparent and malleable, and used for useful purposes, and not saying this is the end to all. So that's kind of just my perspective on that. It's in the end, the universe, it's if you were not in a society and you just you're born into nature, you wouldn't label anything as anything, because nothing has labels. There is no definitive. We put labels on things, but there are no labels in the universe. Ultimately, we put those on there, and the reason we put them on there is so that we can essentially work together, communicate, and understand what we're talking about, and I would say navigate through this life journey, navigate through this world. That's why it helps to label things. So this particular system is a way of doing that, and it can help in different ways. I'm not so familiar with it, and so we're going to run through it together with you guys. Before we get into that, though, I kind of wanted to go into. So I had an interesting talk with my buddy Joseph the other day, just yesterday, and it was funny because he's an improviser, and he's more of an advanced improviser, and so he's been learning about the different archetypes of comedy. And what's interesting about the archetypes of comedy is that I feel that there is a connection to the archetypes of comedy and the archetypes of life, such as these Enneagrams. couldn't give you a super strong explanation, but I can explain to you what these archetypes are. So essentially, here's like a list of like the main archetypes, and you guys should be able to read this. So like on the left there, the status, there's like the servant, the head of the household, the indigenous loner, the high-class hopeless lovers, the older wealthy man, the perky maid, and the sad clown. So these archetypes are actually found in just about every piece of comedy that you see. Like, if it's comedy, it will most likely follow these particular roles. These particular archetypes show up in one way or another. And in improv, the goal is essentially to be able to, the quicker that you can identify the archetype, like if someone walks on the stage and starts creating this character and they're aware of the archetype, of what archetype they are, and you can identify what archetype that is, then you immediately know what other archetypes would either like fit best with that, or like what, it's like where the joke is going to come in, because all these particular characters have specific flaws. So let me give you guys an example. So here is you should be able to see this. So here is the doctor, the quote-unquote doctor, and let me see if we can make that bigger. Not so much, but okay, I'm going to go back. But so the doctor appears to be a learned man, but generally that impression proves to be false. He is older, wealthy, and a member of the Vetchi, whatever must be like a wealthy society. He's hopelessly unsuccessful with women, believes what he is saying to be true but is erroneous, and leads into further trouble and confusion. So with all these characters, they have specific strengths and weaknesses, and their weaknesses lead to particular conflicts, which is where the comedy comes in. So anyways, I found that interesting. I just wanted to jump into that before we got into the actually Enneagrams, because I guess what I'm getting at is like there are patterns in society, not only in comedy, but in ourselves, that just are. It's kind of part of being human. And I feel like if we can understand more of these archetypes, maybe it could help us to communicate better. Maybe it could help us to collaborate better. Maybe it could help us to be more understanding of each other. That's my perspective on that. I feel like it can be something that's useful. So, and for me, it's like my belief is that you can believe whatever you want to be true. Anything can be true if you say that it's true. And if you're going to believe something of some sort of belief, if you're going to believe in some sort of system or some sort of whatever science or whatever that is, if you're going to believe in something, make sure that it's resourceful and useful, and not something that's going to limit you or hold you back in any particular way. So, looking at it through that lens, let's look into the Enneagram. So, this is what an Enneagram looks like, and I wish I could center this more on the page. Can I center this more on the page? Let's see. Let's see if we can do that. I think I can. So, as we're looking at this, as you can see, it's like a circular dealio here, and let me just here we go, I centered it. Okay, so the circular dealio, and each number represents an archetype. So if you're a number 1, you're a reformer or a perfectionist. Number 2 is the helper caretaker. 3 is the achiever, the performer. 4 is the individualist, the tragic romantic. 5 is the thinker and the observer. 6 is the loyalist and the questioner. 7 is the enthusiast, the epicure. And 8 is the leader and the challenger. And of course 9 is the peacemaker and mediator. I find this interesting because there are definite similarities immediately that I see with numerology. Number 1, the reformer, ones are usually the first to do something. They're typically the trailblazers. They're the ones that are here to express their individuality. They're here to express their uniqueness. And so reforming, the concept of reforming things definitely makes sense in terms of that. 2s absolutely in line with numerology. Helper, caretaker, yeah, this is a supportive number as well. 3, the achiever and performer, again, yes, falls numerology. 4, individualist and tragic romantic. That one I wouldn't. 4 is more of like this, more of structure and process, and the builder. I guess if I looked into that more, it could be similar to numerology, but I'm not totally sure. 5, the thinker observer, yeah, I could totally see that. That's like the 5 in numerology is more of the traveler. It's the number of change and movement. So yeah, I could see that. 6, the loyalist and questioner, yeah, that definitely fits, because 6 is the number of responsibility, family. That definitely fits. 7, enthusiast and the epicure. This one too, I'm struggling with, because 7 is more of let's see, what is that? That's the number of wisdom. It's the number of like really, like, I would say, focusing in on a particular. It's basically the studier, the person that is like quietly studying and looking into the details of this or that. So enthusiast, I think you could actually go with that, because if you're enthusiastic about something, you're studying it very thoroughly. 8, leader and challenger. I could see that. 8 is the number of a power number. 8s are definitely leaders. That's definitely possible. And 9, peacemaker and mediator, definitely fits as well, because 9 is the number of wisdom. It's very much a peaceful number. It's very much a giving number. So that absolutely makes sense as well. So there's definite similarities there, which I find super fascinating. And so let's look into this more. So how does this system actually work? Let's look into this here. So basically, here's a basic overview. Okay, the structure. The Enneagram structure may look complicated, although it's actually simple. So it's got this deal going on. These 9 points are connected to each other by inner lines of the Enneagram. Note that the 3, 6, and 9 are connected to form an equilateral triangle, and we'll go into why that's important later. The remaining 6 points are connected in a following order. 1 connects to 4, the 4 with the 2, 2 with the 8, 8 with the 5, 5 with the 7, 7 with the 1. And again, we'll go into how that is connected in just a bit. So let's look at the okay. So let's go over to some like brief points about that. So they say that you do not change from one personality type to another. So basically, you can take this Enneagram test and then figure out what it is that you are. And once you figure that out, usually it doesn't change throughout your entire life. The descriptions of the personality types are universal and applied equally to males and females. Not everything in the description of your basic type will apply to you all the time, because you fluctuate constantly among the healthy, average, and unhealthy traits of your personality type. The Enneagram uses numbers to designate each of these types, because numbers are value neutral. So basically, there isn't one number that's better than the other. It's more of the categorization. The numerical rankings of the types is not significant. A larger number is no better or smaller. Oh, that's what they were saying in that one. Okay. No number is inherently better or worse than the other, like we were just saying. Okay. Anyways, okay, so let's look into this. So if you're a number 1, you're principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionist. 2 is, so does this, let's see, I wonder if this, because I am a 1, does this fit with me? Principled, yes. Purposeful, yes. I mean, like, I could relate, I'm sure I can relate to all these in different ways, but it's just like, are these some of my core traits? I don't know. I'd have to look into this more, but 2s are generous, demonstrative, people-pleasing, and possessive, yeah, more of a supportive role. 3 is adaptable, excelling, driven, and image-conscious, okay. 4 is expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental. 5 is perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. 6 is engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious. 7 is spontaneous, versatile, acquisitive, and scattered. 8 is self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. 9 is receptive, reassuring, complacent, and resigned. So anyway, so basically you have all these different energies, and so you can actually categorize them into specific, I guess, types of I guess say centers. So they have these 3 different centers that where different numbers essentially fall into have a similar kind of feeling. So the 8, 9, and 1 are more of like they are mostly dependent upon their instinct. So these are more of like intuitively based numbers. So if 8 is more like businessmen, if 9 is more of like mediators and peacemakers, if 1 are more of like trailblazers, these are the people that are using their instinct, their intuition to operate within the world. That's, at least they lean on that the most. If you go to the 2, 3s, and 4s, these guys are using the feeling centers the most. They feel things out predominantly, not that they don't use their instincts, but predominantly they use their feelings. And then of course you have the thinking centers of the 5, 6, 7. As I said before, the 7s are more of like the learners. They're like in the book, so that makes sense. 6s are more about responsibility, and 5s are definitely using their brains a lot in different ways. So 5, 6, 7, these guys are predominantly thinking first, and then obviously using different parts of this as well. So you have these centers, but then you also have like these. This is how each. Okay, so let's see. Each type has a particular way of coping with its dominant emotion of its center. So the 8s, 9, and 1s cope through anger or rage. 2, 3, and 4 cope through shame. 5, 6s, and 7s cope through fear. So this, we can go into this deeper and more on a later date, and I don't know much about this as well, so I'm not going to go into that part. There are wings too. So basically they say that, so let's go back to this first one here. So they say that if once you find your number, so let's say I'm a 1, if I'm a 1, that's my dominant kind of archetype, but there are wings, they call them, that I can also reflect, that are also part of me as well. So the one, and actually these aren't the wings. The wings are actually the ones that are on the left and the right. So the 1, his or her wing is the 9 or the 2. So if I'm a 1, I predominantly express this aspect of being a reformer or a perfectionist, but I may also express traits of being a peacemaker or mediator, or also a helper and caretaker. And they say that typically you have one wing that that you are specifically lean towards. But they said if you do a lot of, like, I guess we'd say personal work, self-development, spiritual work, you may develop 2 wings, which is interesting. I find it interesting because if I am a 1, it's interesting because I was born on the 9, and I was born on September 2nd, so 9 and a 2. And in numerology, you do use the 9. The 9 and the 2 are very relevant to who you are, and when you add up the 2 as well, that makes a difference as well. So, interesting enough, yeah, the 9, they do represent different aspects of your personality. So I'm definitely seeing interesting patterns with that, and which is fascinating to me in different ways. So, and actually, this is kind of a cool. It's about the same. So this one's, pretty much the same. Okay, and this one is actually showing the 3 centers, which is cool. So I like that as well. So let's stick with that one for now. So let's look more into. Let's see, is there anything else that we wanted to talk about with this? So we have that. Let's see, what else is going on with this thing? Oh yeah, so then the last part is levels of growth. So basically, there's this thing called integration and disintegration. So as you can see on this, and hopefully you guys can see that, so on the right there, you can see that there are little directional arrows here. So like if I'm a 1, you see the arrow integration. Actually, this is disintegration. Sorry, direction of disintegration. So basically, if I'm disintegrating, which is this means that an average to unhealthy 1 under stress will eventually behave like an average unhealthy 4. So basically, if I'm unhealthy, I will respond like a 4, which is, what do we say that is? A 4 is a romantic individualist, aesthete, aesthetic. So essentially, if I'm a 1, when I'm like experiencing stress, then I will move into that realm. But if I'm experiencing growth, I'll move into the 7 route, which, as we said, is the epicure, generalist, and adventurer. So interesting enough, and that kind of makes sense for the 1. It's like if the 1 is more of like the reformer or trailblazer, it would make sense that it would be more adventurous and actually want to look more into the details of things. And what did we say? Epicure, generalist, adventure. Yeah, just be more open to looking into more things. So that's an interesting thing. So essentially, the 1 path of growth is 1, 7, 5. So it follows this pattern. So it follows these numbers, and I'm curious how this works. Like, it's like, can you move up? It's like as you grow, do you grow with the? It's like, do you move from in phases in terms of these numbers? I'm not sure. That's a question that I have. But they do say that the sequence for the direction of integration is 1, 7, 5, 8, 2, 4, 1. And then if you're let's say you're a 3, then it goes 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9. So you're kind of in this, you're in the triangle rather than the, what do they call it? The I don't think they have a name for the other one. So yeah, that's an interesting component. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, so that's like kind of like a basic idea of that. Here's a couple more things. Let's see. So you guys can't read all of this. And actually, I can probably move this over a little bit. Let's see if I can move that a little bit. There we go. Okay, so here's kind of like a bit more about these different numbers here. So each has like a particular ego fixation, a holy idea, basic fear, basic desire, temptation. And I think there's one more that we can't see. Yeah, there's virtue, stress, and virtue, and then they go into the integration, disintegration patterns as well. So basically, what this is like, they say that like by like age 4 or 5, you've gotten to a point where you have developed an ego. So they say by 4 or 5, you've developed a particular archetype, and they don't know necessarily how or why that comes about, but it does. And it does for everyone, and typically you can find one particular archetype that you resonate with much more than the others. And like we said, like it's not like you don't have any of these other traits. There's definitely wing traits that you have, and obviously like you're gonna have all these bits and pieces of all of these, but there are dominant ones that reflect you and differentiate you from another person. So essentially what we're doing here is like, classifying ego structure, and ego structure in my opinion it's what allows us to say like, I'm this, I'm this, you are that. It's like, it's the identification. It's like allows us to say like, I am not you, we're separate, and so because we're separate, we can experience each other, and we can work with each other, and we can understand each other. And before that, it's like, before that, I think that like right when you're born, you have no identity, you have no ego, and so you're still not even aware that you're in a body yet, and that's interesting as well. So it's just like, so once you finally claim your body, you're like, hey, I'm in a body, I'm on Earth. I am this, then you develop this particular archetype. And I think that essentially the processes of life is developing an ego, getting to the point where like you almost like forget that not having an ego is a thing, and then when you die you like lose your ego again, which is and then you recycle through that process. And that's what this experience on life is. It's a duality, and we get to experience this aspect of having an ego, which is like something that we wouldn't have in a non-physical space, which is fascinating stuff to me. So anyways, that is the concept of the Enneagram. So I hope you guys found that interesting. I'm definitely going to look into this more. It's super fascinating to me, especially since I am more of like I love analyzing things, and like this type of stuff always fascinates me. I don't like to go overboard with it because it's like not the end to all. It's not the truth. It's only as true as you make it, and you should only use it if it's going to be useful, and also as long as you're not limiting yourself or judging people in a way that I guess I would say is limiting them and limiting their perspective and saying, oh, I already know what you are, versus like, oh, these are some things that like we could expect from you, or like there's a good chance that you're good at this, but I'm not gonna go ahead and assume that. It's like, oh, okay. This is it's just, I think it's something that could be useful, but it also, just like anything, just like astrology, just like numerology, just like any sort of science, just like science in general, like anything that requires labeling, you can take it in the wrong direction, and very easy to do that. So anyways, I hope y'all like this. I'm gonna be peacing out. I will see y'all tomorrow. Peace and love.